the deposits may come in my name, but it's really not one
It's
income.
it's
It's
a
our
joint
income.
effort. Yeah, I mean,
Then the next call I got was basically like, "Can you be in New York in 4 days?" And
and that's when your traveling venture started. I know about this whole story about. I mean, you're still using points from that business from doing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
we still have points. So that's Jake from Ethos.
Jake from Ethos. Yes.
Yeah, is because as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody walking this planet that can claim the status of being perfect in anything.
Yeah, our president and CEO Barry Clarkson always says you can't be a mental wee wee. In the night, hey,
Exactly.
that's the most polite way to saying you can't be a mental wee wee in this business.
Well,
It is not. It's not for the faint of heart. That's for sure. So, welcome you guys back to the second podcast that I have ever recorded. So, thank you for whether you're listening, viewing, however you're doing it. We appreciate every single one of you guys being here. Actually tonight, we had a long day at our second day of the conference. That's why we're dressed the way we are. And you're going to see, probably my best friend, brother, running buddy. He has challenged me ever since I got into the business. Got started just barely before me, but yeah, keeps me on my toes and everything like that. So I get the honor to introduce Griffin Carr. And yeah, I can't wait to discuss what we're going to discuss and for you guys to hear how our stories have kind of aligned in a sense. So, Griffin Carr, thank you for joining.
yeah, man, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. So today was a very fun day. If you guys weren't here, don't mind his mustache. I asked him to shave it. He wouldn't shave it. So he's going to look the way he looks, I guess. So, hey, confidence is key, right?
Right. So for those of you that are watching this, normally I have pretty full beard, but yeah, we had a special event today where I was one of the game show hosts for one of the sections, and this just happened to go with the look because we had a '70s vibe going on for a training event related to theater group system, ecosystem, and field underwriting. So this just happened to be part of it, and like you said, it's the evening. We've wrapped up for the day, and yeah, I'm rocking the look for now until my wife makes me shave it off.
Yeah, I wonder how long that's going to take her. That's for sure. So
It's probably a matter of hours, maybe a day or two at best.
you'll probably have it tomorrow, and then when you get on the airplane in first class, you'll end up getting it taken off. So that's for sure.
I'll probably rock it through the airport.
Hey, there you go. Hey, there you go. So, but yeah, the game show was epic. I'll throw some video. We got video of the game show. I'll throw a couple clips in there so people can actually know what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, man. Hey, thank you for being on. Especially the zero to everything. I know you didn't have a very fast start and things like that. We all have our struggles getting into this business, and history prior to this business. So I always like starting there, kind of give us an idea of, where you first came out of, how you got into insurance, if you've tried multiple businesses and kind of let's go into there and then we'll dive into there.
sure. Yeah. So I'm one of those people I think that's pretty common with our generation where I've done a little bit of everything in terms of work. I worked in and out of college and came out of school. I'll give the Cliff Notes version of a resume, so hopefully it resonates with somebody who's done lots of different things. But I actually started out as a just cleaning pools. I was a pool boy. Through high school and college, I lifeguarded and learned some of the technical aspects of that, and that translated into after I graduated college. I went to school for acoustical engineering and had in getting breaking into the production community, and it's very much the gig economy when it comes to that type of thing. So I started with a full-time job. Not very long into that, I did step into a management role and managed uh, fleet of trucks going out doing service, that kind of stuff. And things just kind of changed over time. It's kind of leads up to the the reasoning why I eventually figured out that I was going into business for myself, or that's where I needed to be. From there, I got laid off for some crazy reasons, just from a boss who had no clue what they were doing, and kind of had this. They bought their way in and just completely ran a business into the ground. From there, I went into a similar role with a company that was a large vending company. I managed a um, what was called an OCS division, so off office supplies. So I managed inventory, did sales for accounts, made sure the trucks were running efficiently, was a buyer. Um, you know, kind of hit the ceiling there. It was a similar, actually different situation, but I grew that division much faster than the owner had anticipated. And after less than 2 years, was basically told, "Hey, we're not going to allocate any more money on the buying and supplying side of this. So your team's basically just got to manage with what we're willing to allocate to that." And when you've got guys with base salary with commission based levels, it's essentially like saying, "Hey, so your income is capped for the foreseeable future." So not
Mhm.
many of us were willing to hang on to that for a while. When I left there, one of our clients happened to be a a a very large credit card company who's had a lot of commercials. You might have seen Jerry Seinfeld on them before back in the day. And I was a business analyst for them. It was one of those things that kind of fell in my lap where it was the one and only corporate job that I had where I got in there and gave it what I thought was my best and quickly realized that that corporate bureaucratic environment, maybe I'm too analytical, maybe I just am not cut from that cloth to
Right.
work in that environment. So I did that as well for a couple years. Meanwhile, this whole time with my production background, I was actually working my way into having my own business. I just didn't have the income to justify
Mhm.
doing just that yet. And so eventually I kind of hit the ceiling there as well. And we left on good terms, I
Right.
guess. But,
However
you
you
know,
can leave corporate America. I mean, what do you call it? Good terms and not good
y-
terms? I mean,
yeah, but that was kind of my first push going into business for myself. And it was one of those, you had to make it work.
right.
Thankfully, the planets aligned where I had enough in the works and I had some gigs fall in my lap where I started doing a lot of regular studio work. I worked in the music industry. I worked in what we call like audio post productions, those things related to TV and film,
Mhm.
and even random gigs where we did acoustical treatment design for designing spaces, whether it was like a restaurant or a recording studio,
Right.
whatever it was, where it's just now noisy environments and people want it to be comfortable, whether it's for a production environment or for something where just somebody goes into a restaurant and they're located next to a train station. They want it,
Mhm.
high end restaurant. They want the environment to be comfortable and um, you know those little things matter when you're running a business.
Right.
So
Exactly.
um, so I did that for a while, and with it being sort of a gig thing in that world, you have to be very multifaceted. And so I was doing studio work. I eventually landed a job working for an entertainment company that managed a lot of um, high dollar party bands and corporate bands. They got hired for all
Mhm.
these things where people spend crazy amounts of money. But it was a very cool gig. That was my first job, tour managing and overseeing live production events. Uh,
So I was gonna stop you there real quick. So getting into before you get into production stuff, because I know that's kind of like the segue into getting closer to the insurance career. So if you had to guess, out of coming out of high school, how many, even if it's just corporate America, how many corporate jobs do you think you had between coming out of high school to getting into insurance?
Actual corporate job one.
Just one, okay.
Yeah,
But how many businesses would you say you tried between the gigging and all the other things?
I would say three.
3? Okay. So, yeah, because I always like pointing that out because a lot of people think that people just get into insurance and, it's the only thing that they try. Because I know personally, my family calls me the guy that tries everything. So, and so, like, I had a lot of, tried a lot of different things, a lot of different MLMs and things like that to get my ball rolling. Then I got into corporate America, worked in corporate America for, 4 years, just trying to find what fulfilled me the most. So
Yeah, I would say three because those were the three primary full time jobs that I had post high school and college. The only sales background I had was working in a retail environment in a camera shop. And that wasn't even something I was necessarily into. I just my best friend uh, went to SCAD, and was a video production guy, and so by default, with me having the musician background, I just kind of became the audio guy. And
mhm,
so leading up into that, there were some sales related to working the OCS division of that vending company. But outside of that, I had no sales experience at all whatsoever, especially in the environment we're in now. Um, it was a totally different atmosphere. And other than, owning your own business, it's like you're always kind of selling yourself
Right.
in some capacity of what you're
Mhm.
doing, but not like the way we do now.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, in this business, it's really, you know, how we like we were talking about today in the meeting. It's really perspective of like who we are, who we. It's an attractive based business. We always call it cash flow glow. Being able to have, not even nice things. I don't even consider them nice things anymore. It's just luxuries of hard work. Really, is what I contributed to. So, but I know the audio stuff. I know you had some really cool things that you did there. So kind of give me an idea, or and the viewers obviously, what you went through with. I think you worked for Samsung at one point too, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So leading into that, through, yeah, I did get to that to back up a little bit before I got there. Samsung was one of the clients that I got to, but so I did a lot of the production work. I was running my own production company. I was the head engineer of a recording studio based in Atlanta. I did a lot of freelance work there, bouncing around to different studios, and a lot of that aspect of the sales was, word of mouth and project based work with recognition and getting referrals from that aspect. And I did end up, it's funny. I talk about this with our team and with other people, you know, it, with these type of recognition things, but how little money I was making. So
Hmm.
there was a fulfilling element of it, but being a musician, it's also like it becomes soulless because it's one of those things where it's like it was your passion getting into it, and then you find out the hard truths of what it takes and the sacrifices of standards that you have to make just to make a living. And so the two notable things that I did in that was I did work on two Grammy nominated records. Both of them lost to the same artist in the same year, who happens to be a great artist. I'm not going to throw the name out there, but even that, having being able to name drop something like that in terms of recognition, it sounds fancy, but from an income standpoint, it it was nothing compared to like what we do now.
Oh yeah,
So
I'm sure.
it looks good on a resume, but in terms of, being able to keep a roof over your head and pay your bills, it income wise, I was still working for somebody else. And so coming out of that, I had a lot of things in life going on, and I just wanted I got to the point where I needed to change.
Right. That's what I was literally just going to ask you. What made you, or what desires did you have, or what was changing in your life that you're like, hey man, I need to change. I need to change a pace, or I got to find something different.
A lot of it was personal things, and part of it was that the music industry element, that was a passion of mine, and where I realized I did want to run a business in that aspect, but I just gotten to a point in the industry where I was doing things that I was just I, it was draining, and I eventually just hit that threshold where I decided I wanted to look into another business venture because that was a passion of mine. It was That was one of those non-negotiables for me where I wanted to be able to continue to do that in my own capacity with control over it in the business side as well as from a creative standpoint. And so that's why I started looking to something else. And as it turned out, I don't tell a lot of people this, but now, when we talk about like Matt Weiner and his
Mhm.
being the Walmart boy, one of the things that he's branded me as is being like the hair guy.
Right.
So when I came out of that, there was a friend of ours that actually had just becoming a managing partner of a salon. And so while I was looking for different jobs, I wanted to get my hair cut one day. And so, like you do with any hairstylist, you go in and people tell everything to the hairstylist. And so he knew that I was looking for work, and he's like, so he explains, yeah. So basically, myself and this other individual, we just became managing partners. We were apprentices straight out of high school.
Wait, do they actually call themselves managing partners?
They were managing partners. They were actually promoted to managing partners.
Well, that's what it's called in hairstyle. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought that was only in like law firms.
No, they were called that because there was still other actual owners who had the controlling
Okay,
interest,
got it.
but they were running a location. So In terms of control over certain things in the
Mhm.
business, they didn't have that, but they got the financial benefits of being managers who had financial interest in the business. And so this person had told me essentially, we know how to do hair, but we know nothing about the business side. And he knew that I had been running my own business. And he basically was like, could you help us with some of the behind the scenes things as it relates to books and managing a book of business and inventory? And these were all things that I dealt with other jobs
Right.
I had.
Yeah.
So I came in, and in looking at those things while I was just kind of consulting, if you will, for them, that was when I realized the guy who was cutting my hair. I see some of these numbers. I'm like, holy cow! That you realize you made a six-figure income cutting hair. And for people that work in the hair industry, when you say it that plainly, it's kind of offensive. And to him is like, no, there's definitely more to it than that, which is totally true.
Mhm.
But
Just like with any business,
yeah.
obviously.
So as we started talking and looking into that, and he and me understanding that he apprenticed, the company trained him and then promoted from within, that did fall in line with what I was trying to get to, where I was like, okay, I can learn. And he threw it out there, and I was just, you know, never in my wildest dreams did I think I would go down that avenue.
Right.
It was just not something that I saw. But having that creative background, I did see, I'm like, okay, well, this potentially could be a cool thing because it could be a new creative outlet that I could learn to enjoy, but also there's the potential of making a really good income.
Mhm.
And so I apprenticed, ultimately, I apprenticed in a salon and got my cosmetology license through doing that. I never went to school for it. And I moved up very quickly within that business. And the one thing I will give them credit for is that they did promote from within.
Right.
They recognize people that work really hard, but in to kinda sum up that part of it, I chased every carrot, jumped through every hoop, and I had 2 different opportunities where they actually talked about there were actual new location managing partner positions that had come up, and I was at the top of that list. But then as soon as we think the wheels are gonna start moving, it was like suddenly the rug got, for one reason or another,
Right.
they pulled the rug out from under my feet.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously the downside of corporate America. I was going to school for engineering, obviously, and started in corporate. They offered me that cushiony six-figure income at age 19. I was like, oh yeah, this sounds nice. This sounds nice. And my job essentially was to come into the business and change it. It was a failing store. They said I had 1 year to turn around. If I didn't, they're going to close down the store and close down my position, obviously. So I
Right.
was like, all right, wait, back against the wall. Turn the business from they're doing about half a million. It was actually 525,000 a year. Been open for 4 years and then turn around to like a $1.5 million store the next year. And
It's
then
not easy to do.
it's not, but it was very simple business ethics that you had to follow against, obviously. But it's just funny you kind of mentioned that. It reminded me of after a year and a half doing that, you do all these goals, you set all the things, you do everything that they want you to do, and then they cut my salary in half. And I was like, what? That makes no sense. You make them all this money, and you're like, what's going on? So
Yeah, with where I was in the business, I became I became an in-house educator. As crazy as that sounds, I was taught by the owners, and then I was now teaching other stylists how to cut hair, and I was teaching color theory and all the technical aspects of that. And where it really started to wear on me was that's where they start putting these expectations and workload things on, and they knew I would work hard, but they definitely did not honor my time or compensate me for those things. And so you're doing all this work, and at that point in time I'm working 60, 80 hours a week, and first one in, last one out.
oh
And then
yeah.
I'm pouring into all these other people, but now these other people are reaping the benefits of it. Meanwhile, if I sacrifice my time in doing that in my own book of business to help others,
Hmm.
which is something I'm really passionate about doing, it's like it hurt my income. And then the people that owned it, they're the ones that get to reap the benefits, all that. And in doing so, the way the commission structure worked was like, if you didn't hit these certain thresholds, It's not like the business we're in now where you earn it and then you get to stay there.
Yep.
It's like you could drop back down in commission level.
Oh yeah.
And so now it's like I'm working for free essentially. And by the way, oh, you're getting a pay cut.
Hmm.
It made no sense. So, leading up to what you were bringing up before, talking about the, Samsung, one of my clients, through just for people in the hair industry, my wife can attest to this, and one of the agents on our team who is, a very seasoned stylist. Um, I I would say that I specialized in barbering. That's what I was really passionate about, and so there was a guy who came in that I ended up being really, just building a really good relationship with. And over time of talking, we realized that we'd actually, in the production world, had worked on similar projects, and some of the same projects at different times.
Mm.
And so that was where that opportunity kind of came in, where he's like, "Yeah, I just got hired as a senior director for this marketing agency that was based in New York." And it was funny is that, like, even though he knew about all my background, he didn't even mention the job to me at first, but we were, connected on social media, and I see him post looking for 2 senior producer positions, and I'm like, you know, "What the hell, man? Like, my background, like, come on." So I messaged him, and he was like, "I didn't think you would leave your other job." I'm like, "I'm fed up.
Hmm.
I'm doing everything here, and eh, I know I'm worth more than that." So, he's like, "Yeah, if you're serious, let's go." I did not know a whole lot of it, but that production background that I had before then started transitioning into the marketing and advertising world. And so when I agreed to do it, it happened so quickly because first, even despite all my frustrations with that business, I'd been there a long time with the previous job. I'd been there a long time. And so I wanted to be respectful of that. And at first I was like, can you give me like 8 weeks? Because transferring a book of business is not an easy thing
Yeah,
to
it
do
takes a
because,
while.
I mean, you've got in that world, you've got people booked, 2 or 3 months out sometimes. So it started off with that. And then,
I just gotta mention too, it is crazy. I was sitting down with my barber recently. It's crazy how much money hairstylists and barbers make, and what they pay for chair rent. I was looking at him. I was in the barber shop. I was like, just out of curiosity, what are you paying for chair rent? And that's one of the beautiful things about this business. Once you start making that income, it's like you start looking at different ways to diversify your money. And so he was like, "Yeah, I pay $200 a week." I said, "$200 a week." I'm looking at the store. There's 8 other chairs in here. Adding it up, I'm like, man, all you're doing is paying for rent, and the owner of this is doing nothing. All they do is do like a little cubicle, get that set up, and then the rest is just history at that point.
right. I mean, it's like the McDonald's model, right? We all think they sell hamburgers, but
Hmm.
if you watch the documentary about him, really they're in the real estate business. And
Right.
so from what I realized was like, most of their locations they had leases, but they owned the business. And the ones that I saw that were just absolutely flourishing, that in that industry, that were just on top, it's like they owned every aspect of the business, like what you're talking about.
Hmm.
And you know they were trading that dream. And and there's nothing against, like, for people that's their passion. I get it. um I just did not get into that business because that was my passion first and foremost. I was looking for something different, and the business model was what was attractive to me. Um, I didn't, like, my wife had that passion for, like, for that creative outlet, and to her, of course, she wanted to get paid really well, but at the same time, like, she just
She
loves,
does have a fancy
she
lifestyle, right?
she, no, yeah, okay, that's definitely changed.
Definitely changed a little bit.
Well,
Hey, life changes as you start making more money, right? So, hey, I know you gotta give a big shout out to your wife and your two beautiful kids. I mean, they're definitely the backbone of your business. I can see it in your eyes and everything when you're speaking. So,
yeah,
especially today when she was the host of breaking down the numbers and stuff on the
yeah,
board. So,
yeah. She was my Vanna White today on during the game show. But yeah, where was I going with that? With that, that was her passion, and she was okay with that. Meanwhile, for me, with the relationship progressing, it's like we were at that phase of our life. I mean, we were basically paycheck to paycheck, and we did like nice things, but we also were, as getting older, it's like you want to put down roots or, have a home and talk about having kids. And now we're talking about like, well, how are we ever going to get out of the student loan debt and
Mhm.
these things to actually like move forward, not just in a relationship, but in life. And so when that opportunity came there, the job is like, I asked for 8 weeks and it's like, okay, cool. Yeah, we can make that work. And then I get a phone call 3 or 4 days later. It's like, can it be 4 weeks instead? And I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I can make that work. And then maybe a few more days comes by is like, hey, seriously, can you just put in a 2 week notice?
Mhm.
And I'm talking to my wife, and she's we work for the same company at that point, so I'm transitioning that book of business to her, but knowing what's in the pipeline of the income that's about to come from this next job it became less of a concern. And so yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I'll do 2 week notice.
Mhm.
And then the next call I got was basically like, can you be in New York in 4 days? And
And that's when your traveling venture started. I know about this whole story about I mean, you're still using points from that business from doing that.
yeah, we
Yeah.
we still we still have points. So that's yeah, and so
Mr.
yeah,
First Class over here.
yeah. So you mentioned Samsung. Technically, I was a consultant for a marketing agency. Some of our big clients were like Samsung, Bacardi, American Express, Facebook. They worked with a lot of big companies, and they did lots of different. There's a million different avenues of marketing it, with these type of companies. And
Right.
so, as a producer in the regular corporate world, that you could kind of compare that to a project manager type role. But when I signed up and when I finally agreed to do this kind of, at the drop of a hat, and they originally offered me 3 grand a week on a consultant rate. And then with my hesitation, it was like, all right, we'll make it 4. So then I was like, all right, I'm out because now we're talking about more money than I've ever like with where we were averaging. I was going to make more in 2 weeks than most of the time I was making in a month
Right.
with
Yep.
this other job before. And so I dove straight into that head first. And it was definitely these experiences leading up to that were why I was so willing to jump straight into that, because I kind of figured out that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're a hard worker, you're eventually going to find if
Right.
as you're
Yeah.
leveling up what your value is, you're eventually going to find yourself self-employed or a 1099 position, because you start noticing these things about businesses where you're trading a salary and benefits
Mhm.
for this false sense of security. And but when you really realize from a business perspective, it's like those things are not worth as much as people believe that they are. And you think it's your job, but you're really just renting it, because
Right.
it's the position that the owner of that business decides who gets to fill it.
Exactly. And it seems like, looking in from the outside in anymore with new agents that we bring in, it seems like they all have a story about whether they're in corporate America, try different businesses, but they always are, at least the top elite people, are always the ones that just dive in head first. Like you said, you just dropped it in a like a hat and went off and did the Samsung gig. But that's what really I think builds entrepreneurs in the United States is not having that fear, just going full force and like believing in a system and then learning that system as quickly as possible.
Right. So to transition to get to the industry that we're actually talking about and why we're on here to begin with, and what we're really about now,
Right.
is when I came out of that, on towards the end of that project, that company decided that they wanted to do me the favor of offering me a salaried position, which all that entire time I was based out of Georgia. Now I was traveling nonstop, and I've told this story to any of our agents or anybody that I've interviewed. When I talk about this stuff, the last 5.5 months I was on that project, I'd flown over 97,000 miles on one airline that I was tracking, and that was the airline I was supposed to use per my contract. But with how much we were traveling, that didn't always happen.
Right.
So them coming in and saying, "Yeah, we want to move you into this director role, but your compensation level right now is really more of like this senior director
Mm.
role." And I'm like, okay, well then what are we talking? And like, well, we're gonna need you in the office 3 days a week, and basically we're gonna cut your income by about 25%. And I'm just like,
But you
"Okay."
have a salary.
Yeah, and I'm like,
That's
"Oh."
it's always funny. They're like, "But we'll put you on salary." Like, that's gonna make a big difference or not.
Yeah, so I'm like, "Okay, we're taking a pay cut. You want me to move to one of the most expensive cities in the world, and you're gonna justify it with your benefits package?" Yeah, that's not adding up to me. So I respectfully declined that, and, we took think I was blessed enough to where we had built up a bit of a nest egg. We were in the process of buying a home. I was emotionally and physically drained from that whole process, and so I did take some time off to kind of realign, and in doing so, it's like I settled some things to where like we were kind of moving into the next phase of like buying a house and starting to talk about having kids, and that was a big deciding factor as well, where you know, we were at a place where we finally weren't paycheck to paycheck, but it's like to have a family, my wife's like, "Okay, well, let's do it, but at some point you actually have to be here."
Right,
And with that job, I was never home. I mean, to the degree that they were actually paying to fly her out to me with how irritated I was getting
right.
with being gone, and it was a huge strain on us. And so in that time off, eventually it settles in. I think anybody that has that entrepreneurial skill set, it's like you can't just sit there and do nothing. Even as much as I can keep myself busy with other like music projects and things that I'm a part of where I'm passionate about, I got to work,
Right, yeah, I mean
and you can't just go backwards in life that way. And so what happened was I've been working on a project, needed to take a break, and so I job hunting was on the forefront of my brain, and I started looking, and I came across a video from a it actually was on LinkedIn, but it was actually a ZipRecruiter ad that just somehow ended up on LinkedIn, and it
mhm.
ended up being a video of Nick Theodore. And the agency name, I didn't even realize at the time that it was different from the guy who, from Nick. Actually, I thought I was responding to him. And so I ended up messaging at like 11:30 at night, which is, most people that are that
Who's
are in
gonna respond at
recruiting.
that time?
Yeah, right. It's like most people in recruiting are be like, why is this person doing this? But um so I get a text message the next day saying contact this number to schedule an interview. Went through that whole process, and then having never worked, like you mentioned, kind of MLM platforms, everything. I never worked in anything like that, and I definitely had never worked in a sales role. But in that video, listening to the products and how that industry was so relevant with like living benefits life products, it did strike a chord with me because I had a personal situation with a family member who went through a lot, and because of things that weren't known with their health insurance and that type of thing, kind of being this gray area transitioning from full-time into retirement, you know they did get blindsided with a substantial amount of medical bills
Yeah,
that they just didn't see happening. And so they didn't lose their house in the process, but it did set them back. And so when I was learning about this stuff, I liked that the products were relevant. I liked that there was a system in place as I began to learn where it wasn't a cold calling concept. It wasn't, like we talked about the MLM thing. There
yeah,
isn't this element of, reaching out to your friends and family and buying a product system to then, go push that. And really, you're the customer to that company who's
right.
like, you're buying their packet of whatever.
Mhm, and that was my favorite part, even looking at the business to begin with myself was, we weren't having to reach out to friends and family, Like I
No,
said, I had tried multiple different businesses, a bunch of different things, and as you're trying those things, obviously some of those require you to reach out to friends and family. I had gone through my entire book of business
yeah,
of reaching out to friends and family, and after the 3rd one, they're like, "Yeah, we're good. We're
right.
good. We're good." So, when I saw this business model, I'm like, "Ah, I'll try it," and so but I just want to make sure I clarify too. So the kind of the canvas you were looking for something that had the same income potential that you were currently making, but also being able to have the flexibility to have your family.
Yeah, so I had financially leveled up in that, and so at the time I kept referring to it as like New York money because people the cost of living is higher. People make, on average make more money in those type of cities that are more expensive.
Right.
So with where we live in Georgia, I didn't necessarily have to exactly replace that, but there was a
Mhm.
part of me that knew that like, okay, I'm valued at a minimum of that now. So I did that was a goal. And when I interviewed with my original hiring manager, I threw those numbers out just to see if he would flinch,
Mhm.
specifically to see if if they're going to come back and be like, okay, well, maybe in like 5 to 10 years, and if that was the answer, I wouldn't have even considered it. Um, but he didn't, and so w- I did get a slow start, and I did some research on that. But part of that was when I first.
So getting let's stop there for 1 second. So getting a slow start. What does that mean? Are we talking about you sat with 10 people, you didn't hear anybody, or was it just you just were taking your time, just diving deep, trying to learn as much as you can before you actually got started, or kind of give me the process of like. So you talk to the gentleman, you do an interview, then what?
Well, my slow start was I talked to him, and then I took my time with doing the pre-licensing course because when I started it, it was right before we had an offer accepted on a house. So I kind of started studying and then dealing with the move and getting settled, and then, we had just found out that our first child was on the way, that my wife was pregnant with our daughter. So we had life events. It wasn't
Hmm.
necessarily me getting started slowly in the business itself at that point. But then we get settled in the house, and it's like a ticking time bomb. It's like, okay,
You got a house
for
now.
anybody that has kids, it's like they know. It's like, okay, that there's like this genetic thing happens that you start to realize that I'm responsible for another human being, and I still got to keep the roof over our heads, but also like I got to keep that kid alive. It's like otherwise you're a bad parent. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
And
potato potato.
yeah, so anyways, so that at that point in time, once we got settled, it's like I really started to dig in, and to be quite honest, there was some disconnects with the initial hiring manager team that I started with, and there was an element of this where it kind of was a school of hard knocks because I didn't know what I didn't know yet,
Right.
and I had not plugged in with the company the way we teach people to do now. And the one thing that that manager did really well was that in January of 2020, it was like, hey, if you're going to do this for real, you need to get to this event. And it happened to be Equus Financial's um, national training convention of 2020. It was before COVID hit. And so I got out there, and we did have some other smaller, at the time they were called ETCs or Equus training
Hmm.
camps. And so I had gotten out and met people in the business and some of the people that I was working with in my upline. And that's where things really started to click because then I knew it was like not those excuses didn't matter, and there was way more structure to the business than I even realized. And part of that's on me because I just hadn't plugged in the the way it was already readily available. I just wasn't looking that hard.
Right. Yeah.
But what I got to say about our team is that, coming in, that's not a factor for most people nowadays. That was just like that just happened to be how the dice were rolled for me.
It's funny looking. I've been in it for 3 years. I think what 4 years for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking back from when we first started, I know you even started a year before me. Um, it's completely polar opposite. I mean, it was more like my manager. I remember my manager just saying, "Hey, go through these steps, figure it out." And watch this video 20 times. That's the one thing that she told me. We have a 7-step training program. If you guys don't know, but she told me go to step 7, watch the video 20 times, and you're ready to go. I was like, "Huh? Does that anything else? I mean, I don't know anything I'm doing." So,
Yeah.
but we literally hold your hand through the whole process and get you going.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's a different world, but this i- in this industry, it absolutely will put you under a microscope. And if you're looking to grow, it's the best thing that can possibly happen to you because it will force you to become a better version of yourself. Now, if you're not ready for that, it's going to be, you're going to have a tough time either way, but you're definitely going to have a tough time
Right.
if you're not ready to tackle those things because as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody walking this planet that, can claim the status of being perfect in anything.
Yeah, our president and CEO Barry Clarkson always says you can't be a mental wee wee. In the night, hey,
Exactly.
that's the most polite way to saying you can't be a mental wee wee in this business.
Well,
It is not. It's not for the faint of heart. That's for sure.
getting to that event, hearing I did get to hear Barry speak one time at a much smaller event right before that, and then getting to that event and hearing that and hearing things that resonated with me in terms of the culture of Equus Financial as a whole, getting to meet Nick Theodore in person. I believe that was for the second or third time at that point, but really getting to spend some time. And one of the things that he told me, it's like, I made a good impression. And regardless of any of the other stuff that's going on, he's like, hey, we had some conversations. He kind of understood my background. He's like, I want you to go talk to this person, and this person. And that's exactly what I did. And what that did was like, I started building relationships, but it also it was he was intentionally positioning me to be with some guy like some other guys in the business who were a little bit, or in some cases a lot more, but in a part of their career progression that were had things that I wanted for myself. And so there were things that I could learn from them, but also it was like that was something obtainable that I could learn from them, but also chase them in a healthy way of, a healthy approach to.
Right. And you I just want to touch real quick on relationships. That is one major thing I learned in this business is developing relationships. In corporate America, it's cutthroat. And so with this business, it's really building relationships, having that connection with individuals, even and we just love to help people. I think of even our sponsor, Ethos. He more gracious man I've met, took me out to dinner, took my team out to dinner last night. All right. So, are you stressed out and don't know how to get life insurance right now? Maybe you've even gotten started or don't know how to get started. Well, we do have an actual sponsor here today on the podcast, and it's my honor to make sure I introduce Jake. He's actually the strategic national manager of Ethos, and he's going to explain, maybe why you should look into insurance and why it's actually gotten a lot easier over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Brady, for having me on. Really, the goal of Ethos and why it's so beneficial if you're just starting out in this industry is it makes really simple work of shopping around for you. Just starting out in the industry, the traditional method of insurance has been doing a lot of work on the front end, right? And researching which products and which carrier options are going to be right for your clients. And even then you have to make sure that you're appointed with these different carriers, that you have all the licensing and the contracting that you need. But with Ethos, when you're applying for a client with Ethos, our one single application is actually shopping four different carriers and seven different product options, and we're underwriting everything with an automated algorithm that's over my head all in one place and doing the work for you. So you put a client into an application and Ethos does the rest of the work. We'll determine which of those products, which of those carriers the client is going to be a good fit for and offer them the best rate possible. Really the goal that I've said so many times with Ethos is regardless of who's applying for coverage, we're going to find something that's going to fit for them, and we're going to make that process easier not just for the client but for the agent as well.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's definitely made my business a lot easier to do. A lot of clients just don't know where to start. And if they don't want to go sit down with an insurance agent, it's easier to say, "Hey, go to this link. You're going to be able to apply for the insurance and go from there." So, whether you're an agent looking for another carrier to partner with, Ethos is amazing to partner with. But if you're also listening and you want to get and look into some insurance, we're going to have a link down below that you just click, and it'll literally walk you through step by step. You'll literally have no questions at all. And the application takes maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, yeah, 5 to 10 minutes. We say, the 15 minutes because that's a fun little quip
Okay.
that's easy to remember. But honestly, you can get right through there in probably 7 minutes. Is probably the average.
All right, perfect. Well, I know a lot of us have 7 minutes to make sure their families are protected. So, Jake, I appreciate your time and coming on, and yeah, look forward to keeping our partnership going.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. But being able to build those relationships is really critical in the insurance industry.
Jake from Ethos.
Jake from Ethos, yes.
Yeah, no, it's been crucial to the development for myself as a producer, and then building a team and an agency and our business. I mean, the things that followed. I mean, things changed very quickly for us. And so going back to the slow start thing, it was, you know, I did get dealt the COVID card. And so as I was plugging in and I was doing the right things, none of us could have seen a world pandemic coming.
Yeah,
And
who
that
would have?
happened. And, we'd actually already started building a team and all but two of them dropped off, but we still kept at it. And through that kind of baptism by fire, when we talk about with what you and I went through that time frame and some of the agents on my team that endured that, it it really set us in a position to just uh, not be emotionally phased by the ups and downs of the business.
Mhm.
And that's really where you want to get if you're a new agent. When you become numb to that process, you're really setting yourself up to you have no idea how quickly things can change. And so for us, to kind of jump ahead in where we are now. So my first 6 months in the business, even though I thought I was working like a full time job, I was really only putting in part time activity.
Oh, yeah, same thing when I first got started. I mean, part-time. I look back now, Nick Theodore is like, "What were you doing?" I'm like, "Man, I was making more money than I ever seen in my life." I was like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do."
Yeah, for me, it was watching Matthew Weiner and Matt Gibbons and some of the other elite producers of the company, and I'm sitting there like, we all do the same thing, and if he can do it or she can do it, I definitely can do it. And I had that confidence. And so it took me going to an event where I got in a room with people that were kind of in the same position as me. And I've had a pretty good foundation of what I was doing in the field. But as I like to talk about, you know, it was instead of this making this massive U-turn with the metaphorical aircraft carrier, I just needed to make these minor adjustments with things that I was doing with appointments in homes, even with setting appointments. And I left that event and my production literally doubled. And so that second half of the year in 2020, that's where I really hit like what we would consider to be more of a full-time activity schedule and production pace as an agent. And so our first year in the business, we actually replaced, despite me being, half or part time the
Mhm.
first half of the year, we actually replaced our income from the job before.
Right.
Our second year in the business, as we kept plugging into events, we kept like, I kept plugging in with,
How pivotal do you think events are? You kind of said that you doubled your income, and it's crazy to me. We talk a lot behind the scenes, right, about individuals that come into the business and that they think they're just gonna kill it, make $1 million, but never attend a training. It's like we host these things, and we're probably one of the only organizations that do it, host them for free. I mean, everything that we're putting on this weekend is free to everyone. Um, but you're still gonna only have 10% people show up that we invite.
so I will say it like we talked about at the event today, and I'm going to consolidate. This came from multiple people talking about this. So if you plug in, as Barry Clarkson says, the one thing he will promise you is a hard time. And I think it doesn't matter what business you're in. You're putting it all out on the line and taking control, and that comes with the responsibility and being tough and mentally tough, and also taking that ownership of your own trajectory with your career. Um, so if you plug in on these things, you got a shot. The one thing I will tell you is if you don't plug in and you don't go to training, I can definitely guarantee you that you've got a time clock kicking clicking down, and it's just a matter of time before you're going to plateau and you're going to look into something else, or you're just going to be out of the business.
Yeah, I personally struggled with that. Where you get to a pinnacle point in your career, and then, you lose focus. You stop plugging into events. You stop plugging into meetings. You stop doing the things that you have to do to continue on. Because you literally have to be a sponge in this business. It is an ever. I mean, from 3 years ago to now, the business and where it's come from to where it's now. I mean, I remember having to do things on transcribe paper, or carbon copies, I guess is what the name was. And having it was 30 pages of carbon copies. You had to get a blank check from individuals with an amount on it, and then you had to issue this and fax it, guys, fax. I mean I didn't even know what that was when they first said it. And so you had to fax it to the insurance company. They had to approve it. If there's any issues, you had to go back out to the client. I mean, it was just the business was just horrible. So unfortunately, there was a lot of bad things that COVID caused, but in the insurance industry, definitely it made change the trajectory of how things are done.
Well, there were some bad things, but I mean, as Nick would say, in during that time, there were hurdles, but our business grew, it literally doubled in size.
Oh yeah.
And don't quote me on this, but life insurance in general was the number 2 or number 3 Google search query of that year, because I mean, you're dealing with something that the world hasn't seen in most people's lifetimes, and now they're afraid for their mortality. The products were already relevant for the mortgage industry, but now they're even looking further into that. And with what we deal with, there's a lot of other benefits that are just built into these products. Um, so to circle back to where we are, where we've been going, and how, how I see us moving forward is, in our first year we replaced the income. Our second year we doubled. Our third year we were multi six figure income.
Right.
And by that third year, I wasn't really even working. When I worked, I was working harder than I ever had before,
Mhm.
but I was working less, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense.
And so that's where, to go back to where all this started, the three things that I was really looking for was to replace or exceed the income that I was making before, and see some future there where it was sustainable. I wanted I wanted to be home and present with my family while doing so. And I knew I was asking for what most people would say is a tall order, but I was used to working for myself,
Mhm.
and I wanted to be my own boss. But at the same time, as much as, like, I thought I knew a lot about other things in the world, I was starting a brand new business. And we thankfully, it was a huge blessing to end up on under Nick Theodore and on this team, because he cares enough to be brutally honest. And I know I've worked for plenty of people that will just tell you what you want to hear, because they just want to keep you on that hamster wheel doing the same thing, because they know that it's to their advantage. And with work, getting coached by him, it's like, tell me the good, bad, and the ugly, because I want to grow.
Exactly.
And by doing so, in a very short amount of time, we have hit a level of income that is not a lot of people can do in that amount of time. And I didn't have to go to school for 8 years to try and get to be able to do something like that. We're able to do it at a standard and a quality, and as we talk about, with integrity. We get to do something that's fulfilling by serving other people. We get to provide for our families in a way that, like, mine and your generation, it's hard for a lot of people to live off one income.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially right now. I mean, even the income that we make, it can be hard sometimes. I mean, it's just like, what is going on?
Yeah, and I got to be careful calling it one income, because when when my wife came into the business, she did come in part time, but technically speaking, the business, I mean, she's a full partner.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess she's technically got two jobs, because she's at home with the kids, and she runs, like, she has her lane of the business and she handles that side of it. I handle the other side, when it comes to production operations and agent training and those type of things. So, um, the deposits may come in my name, but it's really not one income. It's
It's a
our
joint
income.
effort. Yeah, I mean, and you definitely, I mean, you guys definitely use that to your advantage. I know recently you were able to surprise her without her even knowing. I knew before she knew too that you were going to deliver a Porsche. So being able to do that, and that's what I love about this business. I was on stage talking today, and it's like I really hope that the people that were there listening really felt when I said, this opportunity really gives us a lifestyle that I can't imagine ever having.
Well, that again, going back to things, coaching with Nick. Yeah, if you'd asked me if I thought I would have been in my 30s buying a Porsche Cayenne S specifically,
It matters.
it, it you know, for my wife, I like, that was something that, 10 years ago, I didn't even think that was possible. My financial blueprint was like that was something that like you know, you're basically born into, or you know, you just struck, you know, scratched off the right lottery ticket. But you know, the cool thing about the coaching elements and you know, obviously getting tax advice and those type of things, it checked two boxes for me on my analytical side. I'm like, okay, this falls into a category where you know the IRS says that this type of vehicle, you know, qualifies for certain types of, you know, deductions because, you know, of X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
But for her, it was her cool new mom car,
Exactly.
and it is fun to drive.
And just a quick disclaimer: we are not advisors or anything like that.
No,
Please talk to a CPA first.
no,
So,
that came from a tax advisor. I'm not advising anybody to that. I don't know what the laws are or how that's changed. It's just that's how it worked out at the time. But it was super cool to not only be able to shop for that, and then you know, the same guy who has coached and like mentored me in our business, it's like it just so happened to turn out that the car ended up being down in Florida near where like one of his where his previous home was. And so it's like I send him a link, he goes out and test drives it for me, and then
first
decide.
off, I just got to pause right there. What man that you know that is worth over $100 million would go and do that for somebody that's not even close to that income bracket? Do you know? Do you know anybody?
No.
It's just it baffles me. The generosity of that man, and I can't wait. He's going to be on the podcast here the next week or so, and it is going to be insane being able to sit here and not only interview him, but just be able to share the presence with him.
Yeah, I can't say I know anybody else like that now, but with the way we're moving in our career and how we like to surround ourselves with people that have positive impacts on us, there will be other people, I'm
Oh yeah,
sure.
most definitely. I mean, first thing I name comes to my head is Brian Adams. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
if you guys don't know who he is, Google his name. You will know him very quickly. And so he's very, I would say, kind of behind the shadows guy. But if you look into him, you'll definitely find his name very quickly. So, but real quick, I just want to kind of go into like where you're at now. I know you're in a massive expansion mode, just like myself right now. Because we've done the hard work and the legwork and laid the foundation. So what's business been looking like lately?
Well, we had our second child, so that was a curveball. That was definitely
Surprise child.
it was definitely a pleasant surprise, a surprise nonetheless. And you know, where we've been is, you know, we're still leading from the front from a production side, and our team's been growing and absolutely killing it. We're developing some awesome leaders within our team that, um, you know, surprise me every day. And it's awesome to see that culture that attracted me to the business starting to transcend into our business and how we attract other people into the business. So yeah, we're always growing and aspiring to do so. Um, you know, it's been another life event, but um, you know, we pretty much haven't skipped a beat. You know, the stuff happens, and that was one of the beauties of this business is that you can endure those type of things, and you know, it's not we can deal with it how we want to deal with it. And it's not
Exactly.
like I got to go say, okay, well, I've used up my PTO for this amount of time. Now I got to go back to the grind. You know, we've been able to handle that how we wanted to. And so, you know, we've got some awesome leaders coming up within our team. We've got a lot of new agents that are just absolutely killing it, like right out the gate. And that's something that, you know, we see. And that as the more time we spend in here, it's, you know, as somebody in a and man like myself as like as a regional manager, as I grow, it's like I'm more efficiently identifying those type of people who are high caliber people who see, you know, opportunity and they're hungry for things. And it's, you know, there's still work to be done, but you know, there's more people coming. It's that, you know, the law of the lids attraction
Mhm.
factor.
Yep.
And so we're seeing that, and you know, we're in a position now where we're looking to move again, and you know, we can pretty much be wherever we want because we can literally work just about anywhere in the country. And so we're leveling up to that aspect of our life, and we're you know, we're excited for those changes, but you know, it we're still hungry for everything, but we're in a cool place in life right now. It's like I have time for to have going back to where this whole conversation started with like some of those creative outlets that I have. It's like I have complete control over how not just my time that I put into it, but like if I want to do something, I can financially fund whatever I want with it.
Exactly.
And from a business aspect, I don't have anybody holding anything over my head there. And then from the aspect of control of our schedule, we're in the same place, and we've checked those boxes, and it's just getting better. We still have struggles like anything else, but we just stay optimistic, and we block out the noise. We don't watch a lot of news, and things are just really positive, and
Yeah, man, and that that's one thing I really love, about, and the whole purpose of this podcast is to make sure people understand, um insurance can be very sexy. It can be really really great. It can really change your family's life, but what I really like getting down to is, there is struggles, but you have to keep on grinding through it. The grind doesn't
yeah,
stop. You can't be a mental wee wee. As Matt Gibbons would say today at the meetings, even though he broke one of the rules because we can't swear, but we can swear on here. So shit is gonna happen.
yeah,
I mean, it's gonna happen. Whether it's a hurricane that comes in, I dealt with that personally. Whether you get sick, things are gonna happen. We're humans. But what the benefits of this business is that you can overcome those very quickly.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely overcome it. And um, I guess what I would wrap up with there is, you know, if somebody's like looking into this, this is a free form conversation. Nothing about this is scripted. This is, myself and Brady. This is completely just,
Organic conversation.
yeah, it's where real life experience. And I would say if you're watching this and you're looking into any type of opportunity, I'm willing to have those conversations. Definitely, Brady's willing to have those type of conversations, and that really was for me personally one of the things that attracted me to this business is that like going back to being jaded with corporate environments and those type of things. And if you're happy with that and you're just looking for a part-time scenario, that like this business was made for that. But if you're not happy with that, there's a lot out there that people don't realize um, is available, and you're not stuck where you are. But it's going to take some coaching, and there's um, there are good people out there that like anybody as regional manager and the other managers like you on the team, there are people that actually genuinely care about helping other people hit those goals. And that's one thing that like inspires me every day about getting up and doing this is that like I'm happy with the things that we do, but like what really fuels me now is helping others hit those same things. And like that's exciting to me because you're breaking out of that mold and becoming the unordinary. And by doing that, you get to do other, extraordinary things in your life that like you just don't realize you could potentially do because
Or
somebody
possible.
put that in your head at some point that like, oh, because of X, Y, and Z, like this is just never going to happen for you.
Right, right. Well, thank you, Griffin. And I just want to make sure before we wrap up here. So we talked about the past, we talked about the present. Now, I've been surprising guest, and we're gonna talk about the future. Okay. So I want what we do on every podcast right now is we're gonna look at the next 6 months. So I want 3 goals, and your wife is in the room, so I will hold these accountable to you. So what we're gonna do is in 6 months, January, we're gonna do another podcast, and we're gonna review what your goals are. So rattle off 3 quick things that you're gonna look forward to in the next 6 months.
Minimum of getting promoted to national manager, um, close to or out of the field as a personal producer because I know I'm worth way more. With my experience that I've been through now, I'm worth way more to our team in that aspect, but I understand how important it is to lead from the front. And the third thing, I got to think about the third thing, Brady.
The third one. That's why I throw in a third one. Third one's rough. Third one's rough.
Can it be something cool, like
Hey,
random, or
it
can it?
doesn't matter. It doesn't have to do with the business. It can just be a goal, just in general. I just want to look back in 6 months when we're talking about this, and we can look back to see your progression.
We're gonna have a new house.
All right, I love it. Is there gonna be a better extra bedroom for me?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. That's all I care about.
Hopefully it's gonna be on the water, but there's definitely gonna be some land.
Well, make sure there's an extra lot right next to it because I'm gonna buy one right next to you. So.
Okay. Okay.
We can ride our jet skis together. How's
we,
that sound?
we gotta start doing some research.
Hey, we can definitely do that. We can definitely do that. So, well, hey Griffin, like I said in the beginning, you're like a brother to me. I appreciate everything you've helped me with in the business, and we've grown together. And I thank you for joining us on the podcast. Last thing, how can people find you?
You can go to cargroup.info and there's contact information on there. If you want to contact me directly, um, if you're looking to schedule an interview, um, actually contact Brittany. Her telephone number is 678-910-0053. But you can also contact if you're kind of on the fence and not necessarily ready for that. You can either email me at griffin@cargroup.info or you can text me at 404-680-0423 and just send me your information and let me know your name, where you're located in the country, and I can send you some information that kind of gives us an overview of our business. And that will help answer some of the questions. That way, when we get on the phone and have some more, we can have some more kind of educated, more in-depth conversations and kind of go from there. But yeah, cargroup.info. You'll also find between Brady's website and mine, there's going to be some cyclical links that kind of bounce back and forth between the two, not just the podcast, but with his business as well. Because even though we both have our own agencies, like you said, it's brother from another mother type situation. So
Most
like
definitely.
there's a lot of things that we work together with in terms of uh, agency development with our teams, and you know, we all kind of have strengths and weaknesses, and that's one thing that I think has always been really valuable about mine and your relationship is we have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's been awesome when we bring other people in, whether it's personality type or background or whatever. It's like we're able to kind of feed off one another, and I love that culture about our teams, but also like with the Theodore Group and with Equus Financial. It's you know you got to work hard and not argue, but we're all here for results. But if you do that, you will find that there is a family culture to our business and our with our teams.
Yeah, it's the family I never expected to have,
Right.
and I appreciate every second of it. So, well, Griffin, thank you again, and I just want to thank everyone that has either listening, viewing, or however you're listening to this. Thank you we appreciate every single one of you guys, and we hope you guys have a great day, evening, or whatever time you're listening to this at.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you, man.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard.